That night began like any other. Over the past few months, my roommate and I had grown close, bonding over late-night conversations, movies, and sharing the kinds of secrets you only reveal when trust has been built. Yet, there was always an undercurrent to our relationship, something I hadn't fully grasped until that evening. It was a Friday, and we had just finished watching a movie together. We sat in the dimly lit room, laughing and joking about how awful the film had been. The atmosphere between us felt both easy and charged, like something unspoken was waiting to surface, but I dismissed it, thinking I was just reading too much into things. As the clock struck midnight, we agreed it was time for bed. I was tired and ready to sleep. Sarah, my roommate, shot me her usual playful smile. "You're always the first one to fall asleep," she teased, and I shrugged with a grin. I changed into my pajamas and slipped under the covers, the soft fabric immediately making me feel at ease. Sarah moved about the room, turning off the lights before settling into her bed, just a few feet away from mine. The room was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the ceiling fan. I closed my eyes, trying to sleep, but found it harder than I expected. My thoughts kept drifting back to the way Sarah had looked at me earlier. There was a difference in her gaze, something I hadn't noticed before. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself it was nothing. Eventually, as sleepiness washed over me, I let myself drift off, unaware of what was coming next. In the middle of the night, I awoke to the sensation of movement beside me. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but as my eyes adjusted, I realized I wasn't alone in my bed. Sarah was lying next to me, her body close enough that I could feel her warmth against mine. My whole body tensed, my heart racing as I tried to understand what was happening. Sarah wasn't supposed to be in my bed, but there she was, her hand resting lightly on my arm. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the streetlights filtering in through the window. I could barely see her face, but I knew it was her. My breath caught as her hand moved slowly, almost uncertainly, up my arm to my shoulder. I was paralyzed with indecision, caught between the shock of the moment and the attraction I had buried for so long. I had never allowed myself to think of Sarah that way, but now, with her touch sending shivers through me, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Sarah leaned in closer, her lips grazing my ear as she whispered, "I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself." Her voice was soft, a blend of uncertainty and longing. Her breath against my neck sent a wave of heat through me, and I turned my head to face her, my heart beating loudly in my chest. I could barely find the words, but when I finally did, I whispered, "What? What are you doing?" She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she pressed her forehead against mine, her hand now trailing down my side, tracing the curve of my waist. "I've wanted to tell you for so long," she murmured at last, her voice unsteady. But I was scared. I wanted to ask her what she feared, but the words caught in my throat. I felt her fingers gently exploring, making my skin tingle with a sensation I had never experienced before, a connection unlike anything I had ever felt. Before I realized it, Sarah's lips met mine. The kiss began softly, hesitant, as if she was waiting for me to pull away. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself responding, my body reacting in ways I hadn't anticipated. There was something about the way she touched me, the way her lips moved against mine, that made everything else fade away. In that instant, it didn't matter that she was my roommate or that I had never envisioned myself in such a situation. All that mattered was how she made me feel alive, desired, and wanted. As the kiss deepened, the tension that had lingered between us seemed to dissolve, replaced by a new feeling altogether. It was as if we had both been holding back for so long, and now that the barriers had been lifted, everything was flowing freely. There was no stopping it. Her hands moved with newfound confidence, exploring my body in a way that made me shiver. I could feel her heart beating against mine, quick and erratic, as if she was just as nervous as I was. Yet that nervous energy only heightened the intensity of the moment, making everything feel even more electric. We moved together, our bodies pressed tightly against each other, lost in the heat of the moment. It was as if the outside world had vanished, leaving only the connection we were sharing. I had never felt anything like this, never experienced such a powerful blend of desire and emotion all at once. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. We lay there in the darkness, our breaths heavy, our bodies entwined. I didn't know what to say or how to process what had just happened, but when I looked over at Sarah, I could see the same uncertainty reflected in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to." I shook my head, interrupting her. "Don't apologize," I replied softly, my hand gently touching her cheek. "I'm not sorry." She looked at me, surprise widening her eyes. "You're not," I smiled, though my heart was still racing. "No, I'm not." For a while we just lay there, looking at each other in the darkness, as if we were both waiting for the other to explain what had just unfolded. But neither of us spoke. Instead, we stayed there, wrapped in each other's arms, letting the silence say what words couldn't. The next morning, everything felt different. When I woke up, I could still feel Sarah beside me, her body warm against mine. Memories of the night before rushed back, leaving me uncertain about how I should feel. A part of me was still in shock, trying to make sense of what had happened between us, but another part couldn't ignore the excitement and the thrill of what we had shared. I turned to look at Sarah, wondering what she might say when she woke up. Would she regret it? Would she want to discuss it, or pretend it had never happened? The uncertainty gnawed at me as I lay there, waiting for her to wake. When she finally stirred, she didn't speak right away. Instead, she just looked at me, her eyes searching mine, as if she was looking for an answer. "Are you okay?" she eventually asked, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I believed my own response. "Yeah," I replied, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. "I'm okay." She bit her lip, as if there was more she wanted to say, but the words didn't come. Instead, she reached out, taking my hand and giving it a gentle squeeze. "I didn't mean to make things awkward between us," she said softly. "I don't want to ruin our friendship." Her words softened my heart, and I smiled at her. "You didn't ruin anything," I assured her, "but I think we need to talk about what happened." She nodded, her expression serious. "Yeah, we do." And so we talked. We discussed everything: our hidden feelings, our fear of what this might mean for our friendship, and the confusion that had taken hold of both of us. It was awkward at first, but as we continued to talk, the tension between us started to ease. We both came to realize that what had happened wasn't something to feel ashamed of or regret. It was real, something that had been building between us for a long time. From that point on, things between us changed. We were no longer just roommates, we were something more, something deeper. And even though we didn't have all the answers yet, we both knew that we were ready to explore whatever this new relationship might become. As we stood there, holding hands and smiling at each other, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for what lay ahead. No matter what happened, I knew one thing for certain: I wouldn't let fear hold me back anymore. If my story resonated with you, or if you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll be sharing more stories like this, tales of resilience, healing, and finding hope, even in the darkest times. Thank you for listening.